So the NBA playoffs are finally upon us, and if this season has proven anything to me, it is that this year has been unpredictable, and I think these playoffs are going to be one of the most wildest and memorable playoffs of all time. I have a feeling some crazy things are going to happen, so let's get into some bold predictions for the NBA playoffs. I'm sure some of you guys are going to get upset by this, but for those of you who don't storm off, consider subscribing as it gives me one less reason to cry at night. Number 1, this is the last time we see Quinn Snyder, Donovan Mitchell, and Rudy Gobert together. I don't think there's a team more set up to disappoint in these playoffs than the Jazz. Everything from their locker room tension, frustration with stars, as well as a history of failures in the past few years. I honestly don't think we're gonna see the Jazz make the second round, and there are just a lot of good teams this year, and the Jazz just are not really upon them. They're not an awful team per se, but if Luka wasn't injured, I don't think anybody would give them a chance of making it out of the first round. But with everything that's been going on with Utah as of recently, a first round exit or another disappointing second round exit will likely cause Utah to break up this core. I still expect Donovan Mitchell to play well, but I don't think that's going to be enough to keep things together. Number 2, James Harden disappoints and the Raptors push the 76ers way farther than expected. Maybe this one isn't too bold. James Harden has obviously had a history of less than stellar playoff performances, and while I think he may be overstated just a bit in how bad he's been in the playoffs, I certainly think something will happen here. Not to mention in his time in Philly, he hasn't been his absolute best. In 21 games as a 76er, he is having some of the worst scoring and shooting of his career. Not to mention the Raptors have an amazing perimeter defense and great defenders who I think will slow down Harden. The Raptors are on their own a pretty underrated team, which I think they will already push the Philadelphia 76ers to 6 or 7 games. I do think Philly is the better team and they're gonna win this series, and I'm sure Harden will have a big game or two, but the 76ers victory definitely won't be comfortable, and James Harden is gonna have quite a few forgettable performances. Number 3, the Nuggets upset the Warriors. While it looks like Steph Curry will be back, he likely won't be at his full self, but honestly he hasn't really been playing at his peak for most of the season. Meanwhile, Nikola Jokic has been on top of the basketball world, and when Jokic is on the court, the Nuggets literally go from one of the worst to one of the best teams in the league. He has been historically great this year once again, and at the end of the day, the Nuggets are going to have the best man on the court, which is always incredibly important in the playoffs. Denver and Golden State played each other 4 times this year, and while neither team has been fully healthy, they beat Steph Curry twice and the Warriors as a team 3 of the 4 times. I still love this Golden State team, and I do think that their ceiling is that of a contender, but their floor is also that of a first round upset. Not to mention they do have a few key guys who don't have a ton of playoff experience, and Andrew Wiggins has been slumping ever since the All-Star break. I love Draymond Green, but in the playoffs is when his weaknesses get exploited, and I can certainly see that happening against Denver. The Warriors sit at 11-12 since the All-Star break, meanwhile the Nuggets are 15-9. I don't think the Warriors are a lock to lose, but their recent slump combined with an off year for Steph Curry, as well as Curry getting injured right before the playoffs, makes me extremely hesitant on the Warriors' potential this year. Number 4, Devin Booker defines himself as a top 10 player. Devin Booker has gotten an extreme amount of media attention in the last few weeks of the season. Calling him an MVP may be a bit extreme, but he is long overdue for the recognition he has finally been getting. Book has been incredibly hot in the second half of the season, to where since the All-Star break, he's been averaging 31 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds per game on a 64% true shooting percentage. He's been on a tear as of recently, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Not to mention, Booker is the guy who will take over and increase his production and minutes in the playoffs. Phoenix is also in a position where I think they are most likely to be the team that comes out of the West. If Devin Booker can elevate his play and lead the Suns to avenging their finals loss last year, then we're going to have a serious conversation about Devin Booker being a top 10 NBA player and finally deeming him an NBA superstar. Number 5, there will not be a sweep. This is an incredibly deep year. The Pelicans are the only team in the NBA playoffs to not have a winning record, and honestly, they're still not that bad of a team. I don't think they're going to make it out of the first round, but I think there's a potential that they aren't going to get swept. For the first time in what feels like a long time, we have a whole bracket of teams that actually deserve to have made it to the playoffs. So are you telling me that you don't see one of these teams winning at least one game? I doubt that we're going to see a sweep. I could easily see the Timberwolves or Hawks stealing a game against the top seed, not to mention all the other matchups are basically with teams within just a few games of each other. This year's seeding honestly doesn't really mean that much, and I just don't see a lot of clear winners. Even if there is a more clear winner than others, I just don't think it's going to be a sweep, so I don't think we're going to see any single sweeps this year in the NBA playoffs. Number 6, either the Suns or Bucks make the finals, but it won't be a rematch. The NBA, as I said, is incredibly deep this year, not just with playoff teams, but with legitimate contenders. So for as good as Phoenix and Milwaukee has been this year, I don't think we're going to see a rematch between them, but I am pretty confident that we're going to see one of them make it again. Both teams come into the playoffs with something to prove, wanting to show that last year's run was not an injury-riddled fluke. For Phoenix, they have additional pressure as they were by far and away the best team in the league this year. And to go along with that, I also think these finals are gonna go for 6 games. Like I said, there's a lot of contenders out there, and honestly a lot of them match up pretty well with others. For the most part, I don't see a top team with a glaring weakness or a hole that would make any finals an automatic win. For whoever meets in the finals, I think they're gonna be incredibly evenly matched teams, and I think it's gonna be a series that's near impossible to predict. Barring a major upset by a team coming out of nowhere, I think we're going to see these finals go 7 games, and I don't think we're going to see another finals rematch. Number 7, there will be a comeback. These playoffs, I believe we are going to see a 3-1 or even a 3-0 comeback. As I've mentioned many times before, there is plenty of depth this year and just a general sense of unpredictability. With that, I think a lot of these teams have that sort of scrappiness mentality, teams that haven't seen a lot of recent playoff success, and teams that know how much work it takes to get into the playoffs, or teams that have just made a lot of comebacks. Memphis, Toronto, New Orleans, Atlanta, I think all best demonstrated teams that are both underrated and forgotten, and they're the ones with the most to prove. I don't think any lead is going to be safe this year. There are not going to be any easy games. Top to bottom, the league is incredibly talented and diverse, and that's going to be shown off this year as there will be some sort of comeback. And number 8, there will be a top 2 seed upset in the first round. This season is looking at some of the best number 7 and number 8 seeds in NBA history. Honestly, the Pelicans have some solid players, and while they're the least likely play-in team to make it, they have some dudes who can win a game or two for you. Minnesota certainly has a strong team with their offensive and defensive ratings placing them as a near top 10 team. The Brooklyn Nets are flat out just not a number 7 seed. The Nets have arguably the best player in basketball in Kevin Durant. Kyrie Irving has been amazing despite playing limited time this year, and he absolutely torched a top 10 defense in the Cavaliers. And now there's even recent speculation that Ben Simmons may be coming back. I have no clue what that would really mean for them, but that certainly would make the Nets even better than what they are now. Their true talent probably makes them look more like a 4 seed. And lastly, Trae Young is that type of player that no matter who you have go up against him, your team still has a chance to win. It's really easy to forget, but the Atlanta Hawks were still in the conference finals last season, so it's not like they're gonna be a little speed bump in the first round. But with all the talent that is low in this bracket, I think we're gonna see something happen, and I think we're gonna see a number 1 or 2 seed get upset. In reality, these number 7 and 8 seeds are a lot similar to a 4 or a 5. This is anything but a normal first round matchup. I think the greatest upset potential comes in the Nets versus Celtics series. If not them, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves match up incredibly well with the Memphis Grizzlies, and surprisingly, these teams actually split their season series with each winning 2 games. Go check out my video on the Minnesota Timberwolves and their potential in the playoffs. I will see you guys later.